What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the latest episode of the Harold McBasketball Show. I'm your gracious host, as always, Harold McBasketball. I'll be my co-host, I Know Ball Paul, and special guest Sean Mack. How you doing, guys? Welcome to the pod.
I'm doing great. It's nice to have Sean on the show. I'll let him say how he's doing. You guys know I always say good.
Well, like I said before we started, man, I appreciate you having me on to the pod again. It's always an honor. I'm a privileged listener of the pod, and yeah, no, I'm doing pretty good. I had my second men's league game yesterday. I kind of put up a Julius Randle stat line. I was like 4 for 12, not my best
No
shot.
one, no one's playing efficiently in those games. That's okay.
Yeah,
No
definitely not my
teams are
best.
shooting above like 30%.
I mean, we won by 18 still, so my
There we
team,
go.
we're still cruising along. We're 2-0, so I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, no, I'm doing good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we were getting some comments that it's a bit of an echo chamber podcast that me and Harry just agree. If we do disagree, like we disagreed kind of on Jalen Green, for example, and then by the end, Harry just convinced me, and I said, "Fine, I'll agree with your take." And so we need some third opinions. We need someone to
Yeah.
have unique thoughts and kind of their own
Yeah, we're too rational. We need to bring on someone very irrational to debate with us. So
Yeah,
that's
and I
why you're
mean,
here, Sean.
yeah, and that's totally fair. As I obviously have strongly and vehemently spoken out against Jalen Green. So I thought when you guys made the take that he is overrated and kind of mid, and I actually still believe that. So I think you made a great choice bringing me back in that sense.
For this episode, we're thinking of just kind of doing a week 2 reactions, but kind of specifically going into teams that we've been looking at. So maybe a good place to start would be the Rockets, since we kind of just touched on Jalen Green.
Yeah, yeah. And like now that we're 2 weeks in, we're starting to really get a feel for some of these teams. Obviously there's some who are like a little inflated in the standings, some who are low and like might climb back up. But it is interesting, like a feel for the lay of the land right now. And currently the Rockets are in fourth in the West, which is like super exciting. I think the team actually looks pretty good. Um, some guys I would like immediately shout out would be obviously like the additions were nice. Like Van Fleet's been like really solid for them. Dylan Brooks has like been a real NBA player this year. Like he's been one of the best defenders in the league. He's been like relatively efficient and he's been a good energy guy. And I think just like Ime is doing a really good job coaching up this team. So I don't know. I really like what they've done. I was kind of bullish on them coming into the year. So I don't think they're going to stay at 4 for the year, but like I do think they're good and I think they could be a playoff team. How do y'all feel about them though right now? Though I like them. Like I think they're kind of legit.
You want to go first, Paul, or?
Everything Harry says, I agree. I don't have my
Yeah,
own.
you go ahead, Sean. And Sean is Shangun on his fantasy team, so maybe go off on the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie that I became high on Shengun initially because of Harry and Paul. They've been
Since day
seeing his,
one, since
yeah,
the
no, they
fucking
have seeing
draft,
his
we've been on
praises
this
since like
guy.
2021. So they put me on to him, and over the last couple of years, I've started to drink the Kool-Aid and see the truth of his skill. He's sort of like a baby Jokic in certain ways. Yeah, I think the team is them and the Spurs are two teams, in my opinion, that are kind of punching above their weight right now, and I think they're going to be competitive enough that they'll give some teams some trouble. They're going to have. I think they stole a game from Dallas. Dallas is one of their 2 losses, might be to Houston. So they're going to be really good. I think in that sense, I don't think it's going to last in terms of them being like above 500. I think they will revert to the mean a little bit, but seeing Van Fleet take a much more predominant playmaker role now that he's not necessarily playing with guys like Siakam and even last year to an extent Barnes, they were already kind of trying to give him some of those more primary ball handler duties. So he's averaging over 8 assists a game most of his career thus far. As you mentioned, Brooks has been playing weirdly well. The one
I
interesting,
just think he's good. It might not be weird. He was amazing for Team Canada too. That's kind of like
yeah,
that's when people started to kind of
And
turn
the
on him a
Grizzlies
bit.
are the worst team in the league. The Grizzlies suck now. What?
yeah, I
Yeah,
guess it's the
fucking
Dylan
fucking
Brooks
awful
effect.
take by me that they were gonna be decent. That was fucking
Um,
abysmal.
the thing that's interesting to me with the Rockets still is the fact that they drafted Amen Thompson, right? They have Amen, and the
Yeah, they
Pistons
do.
have Asar.
Asar's
Just
better.
because Well, yeah, it's like whether or not one is better than the other, it's just interesting to me that they would have drafted him at all, given the depth that they have at the position he plays and the free agent signings that they made. Even if they don't sign Van Fleet and Brooks, you're still obviously looking at Jalen Green, hoping he's going to become that franchise player. I don't think he will be, but they at least are still betting that he might. And Jabari Smith also just got drafted third overall last year. And to his credit, he's actually played pretty well so far to start this year too. He's starting to show more consistency from three. He is already a pretty good defender, which is what he got drafted on, was his defense. But I just find it interesting they drafted him at all, because I feel like he's going to end up getting shafted and not really get any playing time that he needs to develop on a team that I don't want to say they jumped the gun on the rebuild, but like when you add guys like Van Fleet and Brooks, like you're not really fully rebuilding anymore. Like
Yeah,
they think they
yeah,
have something.
yeah, and then they kind of had a need to like reboot or I'd say like jumpstart the rebuild, because like they don't have their pick this year, so they really have no incentive to be bad. So
Mm-hmm.
like we might as well try to be good. And also I think the roster is like so deep now with all the picks they've assembled and the Van Fleet signing, that it didn't really matter who they drafted. Like they were going to get shafted anyway,
Yeah.
because pretty much like from point guard down to center, it's like there was no chance that whoever they drafted was going to be able to crack the starting lineup.
Right.
And I think even if they didn't sign Brooks, it would have been tough, because then they got good guys on the bench. Like they still have Tari Eason, who I think is a really good player.
Yeah.
Some other good young guys, like they got Cam Whitmore, a couple others. So it's just a deep team. Like it's tough to find the minutes regardless.
And
Well, you know what's
they had to hit a salary minimum, so they kind of had
yeah.
to sign someone for like too
Right,
much.
they just dumped it all into Van Fleet. They're like, let's overpay him.
What is wild to think about too, though, on that topic, is imagining if this team was playing the way they were and they still had Kevin Porter Jr., who would have had at least a decent sized role still on that team, given how much they were paying him. If he hadn't, had his off court incident, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, like how him being on that team might still impact other players' development, how much he would encroach on Van Fleet's leadership just because he was obviously the guy before him.
Yeah, and there's so much young talent on the team that they were essentially gonna have to make cuts at some point anyway. Because
Mm-hmm.
like clearly like Şengün's like on his way to, you know, it's early, but probably on his way to getting a max contract.
Yeah.
If Jalen Green keeps improving, he could potentially get there. And Van Fleet's on a max. Brooks makes a lot of money. It's like they wouldn't have had the money probably to keep around like Kevin Porter Jr. and like all of this young talent. Like someone had to go, so I guess he kind of went early. But it would have been interesting to see him on the team, because he was good.
Yeah.
And he was sneaky, like he was one of like the best off ball catch and shoot 3-pointers in the league last year. He shot like 40 something percent from it on like a lot of attempts. Like he was really good. Like obviously like he was playing with the ball in his hand a lot, so like he was taking a lot of like bad step back threes. But like I'll catch and shoots, like he was really good. So kind of a
I
tough
actually
loss, but
didn't.
he's also a piece of shit. So it's probably fine. He's off
Yeah,
the
although
roster.
you don't really get to talk about that now, do you anymore?
No, no, hey.
Yeah, Mister. I signed Miles Bridges in fantasy. Yeah.
They just announced today that he was gonna have an expanded role immediately. So
Mm.
I don't know. We can help my team win. I can't pass it up.
Mm.
Wait, let's touch on this real quick. So there was kind of a controversy that spread like wildfire because Harry's fantasy basketball team, 4-time champions, this is a reputable
Worth
team.
noting.
Worth noting. He made me say that, but they added Miles Bridges from from free agency. To be honest, he was not on my radar whatsoever. I haven't been keeping up with it, but yeah, I don't know. There's some controversy, whether this was ethical versus legal dilemma. Lots of teams voicing their disgust, but Harry's a tactician. Harry, maybe I'll let you, kind of defend yourself here.
Yeah, the way I view it, even though like Miles Bridges, piece of shit, not a fan of him, someone had to add him. So like I couldn't run the risk of like another championship caliber team just like adding on Bridges, who's going to be, 30 plus minutes per game, potential like 80 in fantasy. I can't let another team take him off the waivers. So I'm like, I'm just going to add him. I'll bite the bullet. I'll take the blowback. But, sometimes you need to do that in order to, get a championship. No one will care if we win it all at the end of the year.
Mm.
So you bit the bullet. You did what?
Yeah, I fell on this grenade for everybody else so that nobody else would have to deal with the hardship and the ethical dilemma of rostering him. I figured I would take on that burden on y'all's behalf. So you're
Oh,
welcome.
how generous of you.
Yeah.
You mentioned
yeah.
expanded role. What's that about? Does it look like he's going to be making a comeback, actually?
Yeah, let me see if I can get the quote. They just dropped a new quote today, which is why like my timing of adding him was actually really good because like they hadn't released any news for last month. So I wasn't really like sure if he was even really gonna play or if people were expecting him to kind of like a slow ramp up or something like that. But yeah, Clifford came out today and said he expects him to have like a significant role immediately, then play like 30 plus minutes per game. So he's gonna be featured immediately. So he was like a 90 when I had him in fantasy 2 seasons ago. So if he can even get like somewhat that role again, like this addition is going to be ridiculous for fantasy.
Thoughts, Sean? I can see the look of disgust on your face.
I just, my standing on it. It had been talked about last year with other teams that there was a loose agreement between many of the other teams in the league to not pick up this player. And this is
I was not
coming
a
from
part of this.
somebody, I used to be a big Miles Bridges fan as he was a Michigan State alum, which is my favorite college basketball team. I used to have his Charlotte Hornets Jordan Brand T-shirt.
Do you still have it?
No, I do not.
Okay, just checking.
Gone. Nope. Yeah, so very disappointing to see the way that he turned out. But I also,
It's worth noting. So Sean alluded to a text that I actually sent on December 26th of last year. And I think it's when the news kind of came out. And I texted in our group chat saying, let's just all agree that nobody touches Miles Bridges in fantasy. So this was last fantasy season. I believe it got 3 hearts and a like. Andy, Sean, Shane, and one more person, not Harry.
I think Cena.
Maybe Cena. There was no chance that Miles at that point was going to be coming back for that season. Nobody responded to the text. It was not made official, but obviously me being a league LM and kind of the just general power and control I have on this league, maybe it could have been interpreted as official. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's how I was looking at it, was that, the good-natured, ethical people of this league sort of we're all on the same wavelength. It's sort of what I thought we all signed up
This
for.
this is a fresh season. I don't think
I
I don't
guess
think a text from last season with 4 likes holds any meaning in this fresh season.
Yeah, I guess I viewed things differently. And
the league's made his decision. He served his suspension. He's a piece of shit. It's like I don't like him. But if he's gonna be playing in the NBA and he's gonna be rosterable in fantasy, he might as well be on my team.
Memes aside, I mean, I think Harry is in his right. And like, to be honest, I'll admit that he was not on my radar.
I also notably like drafted him. And when I drafted him, people were like, gross drafting, but nobody was like, oh, you can't roster this guy. Like, you can't have him on your team.
I mean, I was pretty adamant about it. I just knew that it wasn't gonna
y'all thought it was gross, but no one was like, this is illegal.
Well, it wasn't technically illegal, and I still don't technically think it's illegal. I just think it's unfortunate.
Let us know down in the comments.
Yeah, we can leave.
Let us know what y'all think.
The public forum to decide.
Yeah. How do y'all feel about the Miles Bridges edition? I know this is an edition that's gonna blow back, so I don't care if people don't like it. If he's gonna help my team win, he's gonna be on it.
Harry, you're a tactician. You kind of see things ahead of time, and I think, you're cutthroat in that way. You don't let feelings get in the way of building the best fantasy team. So in that respect, kudos to you, I guess.
But. Yeah, you as well. I see you with John Morant on your team. Also a noted felon.
He's not a felon, first of all. He hasn't been arrested. And again, he flashed a gun, which flashing guns on Instagram Live, like, debatably kind of cool. No,
debatable for sure, but yeah, definitely not like nearly as bad as Miles Bridges being a domestic abuser. Totally agree. The strip club one was kind of bad. Like I think they didn't have enough evidence to like prove that he could have like illegally brought that gun in there. But I think that was like a big gray area where like that could have been a felony.
And there was
I'll drop Bridges if you drop John Morant.
right. We're comparing apples to like I don't even want to say apples to oranges because they're both fruits. And when people say that, I'm like, those are actually pretty comparable. It's like comparing apples to
ground beef.
Ground beef. No, because they're both foods. It's like comparing apples to cement. Also, we're getting way off track. I can't believe we were talking about the Rockets, but there was they're like somebody in Jaws' car like pointed a laser at a Pacers player.
Oh yeah.
That one went so under the radar, but that's
his entourage is like, yeah, no, they're trouble sometimes. Yeah, because like the Pacers player said they were like, we thought it was someone who was like pointing a gun at us. Like they're like, we thought this was like a laser pointer attached to like an AR.
It probably was.
It could have been.
Allegedly. Anyway, so the Rockets, it's cool to see Sengun being the focal point of this team. As we hoped, Jalen Green has increased his efficiency dramatically. Van Fleet is taking a secondary role as a ball passer, as a leader, hit some clutch shots the other night, and Dylan Brooks looking like an all-defensive player. So I'm quite hot on this team.
Yeah, the season is young, but for the Jalen Green haters out there, it is worth noting right now that he's gone from shooting 34% from three last season up to like, oh sorry, it was 34 last season to 42% this season. So like that's like elite. If he can keep shooting 40% plus from three, he's going off 5 attempts per game. He shot 7 per game last season. So like he could take more potentially this year as well. He keeps playing that kind of efficiency. Like that's winning basketball. So I don't know. I think he's taking a mini leap right now. You know, it's like I thought the scoring could be up a bit more. He's at 20 per game right now. But the season's still young, and if the efficiency, continues this way, I think he's in for a good year.
Yeah. And some of the finishes have been incredible. Obviously, we know he's an explosive dunker, but some of the layups, the slithery finishes, getting around the
he's got a great package, great layup package, great handle.
And like Sean touched on, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason might not be getting the roles that they deserve with kind of the forward logjam with between Jabari, Dylan Brooks, but super talented team, and they have some depth. I think they'll stay above 500. I'm convinced now that they're, maybe a play-in team. I think they'll regress they're like a game over 500. So I don't think they'll be in 4th or 5th. But
2 games over 500, 5-3 right now, pretty respectable.
The Spurs, I more think that's a bit more of a fluke, and like
for sure.
They've gotten blown out like crazy by the Clippers. So
yeah, we've got the Rockets playing the Nuggets today. So this might be a good litmus test to see how good they actually are. But they beat the Pelicans yesterday. We're down McCollum, but like Pelicans have been pretty good this year. They absolutely smacked the Lakers also 2 games ago. The Lakers suck, but like still an impressive win, like a take care of business win. And then they beat the Kings twice in a row before that. So they're beating good teams.
Yeah.
Without Fox, but yeah, that's still impressive.
Yeah. They're taking care of business. They're winning the games they should, which is like not something you could say about the Rockets last season.
That's for sure. I'm not like discrediting it. Another team that I kind of in the same vein wanted to discuss was the Detroit Pistons, and I feel like they're kind of in a similar situation where they've just got so many people that could be decent or need minutes to kind of see what they have. And it's been really interesting to see so far this season. I mean, like I have their depth chart up in front of me, and their starting point guard technically is Killian Hayes, who I think sucks, but he's a really good passer. And they also have Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser, who I believe he was like their 1st-round pick this year. And he's actually been decent and played a decent amount so far this year. And then shooting guard Cade, he's pretty much locked that down. But they have some good vets. Obviously, they have Alec Burks, Bogdanovich, and Joe Harris. And then
is Joe Harris good?
Sorry?
Is Joe Harris good? I don't know.
Like,
not a believer.
Maybe not anymore, but like...
But like Burks has been like really good for them. His like on-off numbers have been ridiculous.
No, Burks and Bogdanovich are both like very good still. Asar Thompson has been randomly excellent so far this year. His shooting is to be desired. But I mean, rebounding, defense, even some of his passing has been like really. He's averaging over like 10 rebounds a game. It's insane.
Yeah, Asar is interesting. I wouldn't mind like just like touching on him alone a little bit
Yeah,
because he is like so good at like all the little things. Like I saw a stat that he has more offensive rebounds this season than Chet Holmgren and Wembanyama combined, which is
wow.
kind of insane. I don't know how that's possible, but he's just like a rebound machine and like offensive rebounds. He gets like super meaningful rebounds,
Yeah,
which is like how he's able to get so many rebounds per game playing next to, guys like Duran and Stewart who also get a ton of boards. Because
right.
he attacks the offensive glass, like he gets like half his boards there. So he's super good. I think he's already one of the best defenders in the league. Like he always gets the hardest assignment. He can guard 1 through 4, maybe even some fives. Freakishly athletic. Gets like insane defensive stats. I don't know what the stats are right now. Actually, I think it's probably worth looking up. But
I have his
I
stuff
think he's
pulled
probably
up.
averaging like 4 or 5 like stocks, like steals and blocks combined. I think he probably averages like 4 a game.
Yeah, he's got about 2 blocks and like a steal and a half per game.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
he's ridiculous. He has been such a good pick.
10
And I think
rebounds.
Amen is probably like close. Like they're super similar players. So I think when Amen gets the minutes, you'll kind of see the same thing out of him. He's just been hurt and obviously like less reps available on the Rockets team.
Yeah,
But but they're awesome. Like Asar has been amazing. It's like the Pistons team is fun. They're not super good right now, but like
right.
Asar has tons of potential. Stern is clearly like taking a leap. Like we saw the potential last year. He's amazing. Kate looks good. A lot of turnovers this year, but he's still been like really solid for them as expected. Uh,
Yeah,
the only thing that's like really weird, and I'm like, is this like who's their coach now? They had the Suns' old
it's
coach.
the guy from the Dwayne Casey
Monty
from the Wizards.
Williams.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's Monty. Yeah, sorry, I
Oh
was
yeah,
blanking on
yeah,
his
yeah.
name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, you're
the
right.
Monty
Yeah,
Williams. I feel like he's almost doing the same thing he did with Aiden to Ivy, whereas like I feel like he loves to take like a young player with high potential and just like put him in the doghouse immediately. And it's like Jaden Ivey's playing like 20 minutes per game right now. And like,
yeah.
yeah, he's not like, he's still young and raw, but the potential's there and he's certainly better than Killian Hayes. So I don't know how Killian is playing 35 minutes a game and Ivy's playing 20. Like
That's
Ivy's a blue chip prospect. He took 5th overall last season. Get him more minutes. I don't know what he's doing there. So that's kind of a head scratcher for me.
I like it. It makes sense in theory to maybe start Killian Hayes for like shooting purposes and just Jaden Ivey being a more explosive scorer off the bench. But 35
But
minutes for Killian
Ivy's like
Hayes.
not playing though is the thing. Like he's
Yeah,
not in a 6-man role. He gets like 20 minutes per game, maybe less.
Exactly.
yeah.
That's what's unfathomable. But
I was reading some stuff about that a little bit earlier today about Ivy in specific, and I guess like he there's been like reports out of Detroit that he thinks that he's already kind of like the man on the team, and I think that that's rubbed a lot of other people the wrong way. And Monty might be trying to like, I don't know, like bring him back down to earth a little bit and be like, dude, yeah, you were the 5th overall pick, but even still, Cade, this is Cade's team, and then even after that, like, we have Thompson and Duran, who are both high. They were pretty high. I mean, Thompson was a top 5 pick. Wasn't Duran top 5 as well?
I think he was a lottery. I think he was like 12th or something like that.
Okay, so still like, this definitely is not definitively your team. If not even you're not even necessarily like the second guy here. So, I think that I agree with you completely, Harry, that like he's still definitely not getting enough time out there. Like playing Killian Hayes over 30 minutes in an NBA basketball game is blasphemous, but I do think that there's like some validity to the situation.
that's just funny though. Monty just like as soon as a guy has any sort of confidence, he's like, "Hey, you're not that guy."
Yeah.
Just kidding. We don't know what the dynamics are there, but yeah, the Pistons. I think Asar. I mean, like Harry touched on, his defense, his motor. It's just like the whole game he's going at like 100%, just bouncing up and down the court. This team now is just like they defend, and they hustle like super hard. They kind of have their little identity going. Offensively, not great. But like that Sasser kid looks like he has some real potential. Ivy, we've seen the potential there. Killian Hayes improving very slowly, and then Cade has, extremely high potential. But the offense will get there. But at least they're showing kind of that grit, that grind, which is kind of perfect for Detroit. they play super hard, and every night they're gonna, fight for a chance to win the game. So we love that about them.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of good for them to have one more bad season, just because
For sure.
the team could use like one more like really high end prospect, I think, before they try to be good. So Sean's getting dark over there.
I know. I'm trying to get the light. I just dropped my phone on the floor. Hold on.
Oh my god, no worries. We're gonna part two this in a second anyway. The lights are back. Let's go. But yeah, if the Pistons are bad for like one more year, they get like another top 5 pick ideally, add someone else, then I think they can try to be good again. Because yeah, they're just not quite there in offense yet. Although like the defense potential is like looking really nice for them.
How's Stewart doing? Do we like what we're seeing from Stewart?
I'm not the biggest Stewart guy.
I'm
The
not
Pistons
either.
front office has been like really bullish on him being this like stretch 4, and he's just like not that good of a shooter. Like I kind of see where they're coming from because like the form is decent and like he can hit them sometimes, but like not nearly at a high enough rate to where he should be playing next to Duran.
I mean, he
But
is shooting.
Bogdanovich is hurt right now though, maybe. So like maybe they're waiting for Bogdanovich to be back and then they can move Stewart to the bench.
42% this year.
43. Yeah, this season he's starting off pretty hot. On 4 attempts per game too. But last season, to your point, Harry, he was shooting 4 a game and only hitting 33%. And he's only 6'8" too, which is like kind of, I think a lot of people don't realize that with him. He's kind of like Rob Williams if Rob could
Yeah, because
shoot.
he looks huge. He looks enormous out there.
Yeah. I do think something worth noting with the Pistons that's so interesting to me is how they took a chance on both Wiseman and Marvin Bagless, and
Both suck.
both of them are trash. Like Wiseman in particular is like going to go down as an all-time draft bust. It looks like, which is sad because I don't think that like it was his fault. Like he never should have been drafted that high. There was no reason for it. I know you were really high on him, Harry, and I don't blame you from the eye test when he was coming into the league. But yeah, he's just been horrible.
Yeah, I thought he was cool, but I think we've kind of learned that you probably shouldn't be taking a center top 5 unless they seem like a generational talent where it's like they've got it all. Where it's like they're big, great defender, but also have like the passing skill with a little bit of shooting. They kind of need to be like an Embiid level prospect to be taking them, top 5.
Right.
And if they're not, then like they probably should fall like the end of the lottery, more like where like Duran was going, Lively, those kind of guys.
That's a great point because it seems like he was a pretty talented offensive player, but nothing special. And then he comes into the league and he doesn't want to roll. He doesn't want to play defense. He doesn't want to have to do all the things that are like really annoying and tedious, but are expected of centers, especially like defensive minded ones. He just wants to post up and get some touches. And it's like,
yeah. And just, he doesn't have the it factor. And like, that's when you're taking a center, like where the Warriors are taking him, like there was the expectation, like his jump shot was decent, that like maybe that comes along, maybe he'll develop like some post dribble moves, things like that. But he really is just this like raw center prospect. They looked amazing in high school, but like hardly played in college. So he was this big gamble where it was like really this like tiny sample size in college, because he got hurt like pretty much immediately and then got drafted. So we didn't get to see enough of him. And I think we saw more of him in college. He probably wouldn't have gone as high.
who went number 1 again? I know LaMelo went 3rd, obviously. Who
Yeah,
Number 1 was Edwards.
It was Ant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious. Ant, then Wiseman, then LaMelo.
Yeah, and like LaMelo was like supposed to go 2, but the Warriors were like, we're ready to win now. Let's draft for fit instead of like drafting who we think is like the best player, which like, is usually the wrong move. But like when you're in the Warriors position, you're like literally in the middle of a dynasty. Like I get it a little bit more. It just like sucks that like Wiseman just ended up being this generational bust.
They could be so nasty too if they had LaMelo right now with how bad Klay Thompson is now. Like imagine like LaMelo at point guard for them, Curry playing shooting guard, and Klay coming off the bench. Oh my God.
Yeah, and who knows? Like maybe they would have felt like they had too many guards, but at least when you like take the best player available, like LaMelo, they could have traded him to like another team and just gotten back like really good assets. Maybe something like what they did with D'Lo.
I was literally about to say, yeah, the D'Lo trade.
Yeah, just like take him, sell high.
Yeah.
Klay has been a tough watch. Tough watch, Klay.
Yeah. He had a good game winner though, but
really
bad. But yeah, he might be able to pass his prime. I also don't like hating on Klay though, because he went through a lot of injuries. So
yeah,
who knows? It could be one of those things that like takes a bit more time because I don't know. Gordon Hayward like 6 seasons later, it's like looks like he's back in his prime all of a sudden. So when you have like brutal injuries, I think it just takes like a really, really long time to get back to it.
I think the
Yeah.
reason Sean is so against Miles Bridges being rostered and coming back is because he has Gordon Hayward in fantasy.
Yeah, he
I
isn't eating
mean,
to his
I'm not gonna
minutes.
lie, that definitely will chip into his production a little bit. But the thing that's nice about Hayward is he's not really a scorer. His biggest, I guess, addition to that Hornets team is his playmaking. So I don't necessarily think that even if Bridges comes back, it's not going to impact Hayward's value by
Yeah, and
that
like
much.
yeah, and they kind of have different roles because like
Right.
Hayward is like this like secondary slash primary ball handler next to LaMelo, whereas like Bridges is like the opposite. Like he's gonna be like setting the picks. He's gonna be the roll man,
Finishing
playing in
plays.
the
Yeah.
dunker spot exactly. It's like they're gonna have completely different roles on that team, and like Hayward shooting also just opens up so much for him. So
Yeah.
I think he's gonna still be good. I think the only question with him, I guess now as we randomly transition to Hornets, is like do they trade him? He's been really good and he's on an expiring
I
contract. Like, is
know.
there gonna be a championship
I'm
team that is like, we'll give y'all like a first round pick or something for him?
I'm nervous as hell about that.
Because
I
that
have a
would, yeah,
couple.
that would murder his production. Like, I think he would still be good if he went to another team, but
Right.
obviously,
From
like, he has such a huge role in the Hornets. He's not gonna get the same role in like championship team.
I
Yeah.
still love the idea of him going to Indiana for like
I
Neesmith, Tice, and maybe a pick.
I was gonna say like I love Indiana. What I think would be cheeky would be if like the 76ers can somehow get him. I think that'd be fun. And they've got a
Yeah.
bunch of movable contracts now after the James Harden trade, which we should actually talk about now if we're ready to segue. Actually, we got a part two. So part two we should
Yeah.
talk about.
Let's
Yeah.
We should
reset
talk
the
about the
clock.
76ers.
Word.
Be right back.
All right.
And
All
we're-
right, back. Oh, sorry, Paul. You want to do it?
yeah. Let me reintroduce us.
Go
And
for
we're
it.
back.
Thanks. All right, Clippers Sixers. We probably should have started the show with this because these are both like super interesting teams to talk about right now. Let's start with the feel good story. Sixers, good, maybe better without Harden. It kind of turns out like Tyrese Maxey's like the exact same thing. He's just turned into prime James Harden. So it's kind of awesome. This team just like has Maxey now in this expanded role. He's been ridiculous. Does it all, scores, rebounds like really well for his size. He's developing awesome chemistry as like the main pick and roll guy with Embiid now. Embiid also deserves a shout out. I think like he is having his best season so far. I mean, early in the season, but fantasy wise, he's like up there with Jokic. Like he's just been absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely monster games. The Sixers feel like they've entered the tier that felt like it was reserved only for the Bucks and Celtics, which is amazing because all of a sudden this like two-man race in the East now introduces a third team that feels as good as these other teams. So good story for the Sixers. Like they look awesome. They made a good move getting rid of Harden. Somehow they got better by just like adding these old vets. And looking how the Clippers are doing, I think it's early, but I don't know. It feels like maybe Harden doesn't contribute to winning the same way he used to.
I do want to say real quick before you go, Paul, that we should all have Kelly Oubre in our thoughts because he
Good
got
shout
hit
out.
by a car pretty wild last night, and he has a few broken ribs. It sounds like he'll be all right, and probably will play again this season. But that's terrible.
Absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's like, and he was an awesome player for the Sixers this season. Like always has been. Cool guy, like fan favorite. Everyone loves him. Super fashionable, super cool.
He's
awesome player.
Looking guy too.
Super handsome, super hot.
Threw that out there.
Yeah, big loss for the league not to see him every night, and it's just like, and it just like sucks to like to have a season get interrupted with such like a freak incident like that. So
yeah, sorry,
we're praying for him. No.
Actually,
Definitely worth shouting out. Hoping for a speedy recovery for him.
I was going to mention it, and I was probably going to do it in a more joking fashion. So I'm happy that you cut me off and made it a bit more tasteful because there's nothing funny about it, but there is something slightly funny about it.
More the randomness of it. Like
it's random and it's cartoonish getting hit by a car. Like,
yeah,
but it's horrible. And like a car is like, cars weigh 2 tons. Getting smashed by a car is like insane. But
yeah, and like when your job when your job relies on your body, like it just like sucks so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible. But on Twitter, seeing Kelly Oubre got hit by a car, like I was like, what the?
It is, yeah. It is one of those kind of things that you.
And it was super late, like getting the notification too. Like it must have been like 2 a.m. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, is this real? Like, is he okay too? Like the headline gave us like nothing. It was like Kelly Oubre hit by car, and I was like, is he dead?
Yeah.
So very glad to hear he's like okay, and like although like ribs like sucks, um, feels like that's kind of like best case scenario when you get hit by a car. So
Oh, yeah.
glad it wasn't like too serious.
And he should be back at some point this season. But early on, he was a great contributor. He's, at the forward position, being a great defender, allowing their more offensively talented players to do their thing. And then he'll just hit ridiculous threes. And
His corner 3-point shot is like amazing. I feel like it always goes in.
yeah. He hit some crazy ones against the Celtics. So hoping him the best. Whenever a hot person gets hurt or like, it's extra sad. If he was ugly, if this was like Sam Cassell getting hit by a car,
yeah.
Damn.
That's not nice. He's on our coaching staff.
He's great for our coaching staff too.
I'm sorry. He's not even that ugly. He gets kind of like anyway. I don't know if it's on video, but I feel like I've been saying that the Sixers would be so much better without Harden. Maybe that wasn't
you did
so hard of
too.
a take.
That does sound like something you've said.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it. Like, and we're kind of talking playoffs last year. Like, all people were like Harden, like playoff choker. I was like, maybe not. But I don't know. Like seeing this team without Harden, like yeah, it does seem like they're probably better off without him. And we'll kind of see when playoffs roll around. We do need to see Embiid play better in the playoffs as well. But early on, like it feels like they're more of a threat now without him, which is super weird.
I had Maxey in fantasy, and every time Harden wouldn't play, Maxey would be incredible. He'd put up like 30 points, like 8 or 9 assists. So I think that's
insane
kind of
efficiency too. Like Maxey's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Like high volume too.
Yeah.
And he's quick with his decision making. He's not gonna. I mean, he's the opposite of Harden in the fact that he's not going to dribble it out for too long. He's so fast and bouncy. How he gets into his crossover and love Maxey. He also has a podcast, and he's a good positive dude.
So. Yeah, he's shooting 40% on 8 threes a game this season, and that's like the expectation for him because in seasons past, like the last 2 seasons, he shot 43% from 3 on like 6 attempts per game. So like he's just that guy. Like he's just this ridiculous shooter, and I just put the ball in his hand so much more. Great decision maker, and you're right. He's a total opposite to Harden, where it's like everyone hated Harden because he's like total diva, dribble too much, kind of seemed like a bad teammate. And like Maxey's like this perfect teammate, super likable, super sweet guy. So it feels like a good feel good story, not only for Maxey but just for the Sixers organization as they've been freed from this drama. I can really just like focus on their young core now.
I'm sure there's more drama around the corner knowing the Sixers, but for now, enjoy it. Because this looks like a very, very good team. I think they're first in the East for now, but I think it's a really well-built team, and I expect them to stay at the top of the East with the Celtics and the Bucks. And on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the Clippers, who are currently down 12 to the Grizzlies.
Oh, to the Grizzlies? Oh,
I do want to jump in and talk about the Harden situation because
let's go off. Start cooking.
In preparation. Well, I mean, I don't think I could speak to it any better than that. I'm sure you guys saw the clip of that reporter at the Mavericks game, who basically dissertated the last like 5 years of Harden's career in 2 minutes and called him a total clown. It was, if you haven't seen it, it's one of the funniest clips I've seen in a long time. But something that I've been thinking about, and when I was preparing to join the podcast today, I was sort of doing research on Harden and some of the other kind of players that have been in his position recently. And one player that came to mind was Carmelo Anthony. And when Carmelo got traded to OKC, there was a reporter who asked him about coming off the bench. And he basically looked at the guy and started laughing and was like, "You're a total clown. Like, why would you even propose something like that?" And then after OKC, he was out of the league for like 2 years. He didn't play. And then Portland picked him up, and he basically begged Portland to let him play for them. And he came off the bench and was actually pretty good for them in that role. And it's interesting to me because I think when Harden got traded to the Brooklyn Nets initially, a lot of people gave him a lot of goodwill because A, he wasn't being anti-Semitic like his teammate was, which kind of helped get any sort of nonsense off of him. But also he was, from a scoring perspective, taking a step back. He was passing and distributing a lot more, and that was sort of his primary role on the team. And I think that when he went to Philly, it was pretty obvious again that, oh, wait, no, he's still the same player who thinks that, like, this whole bullshit that he said last week about being the system.
So funny. Awesome.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure it was taken out of context, but like you you know not to say that. Like you knew that people were going to run away with that.
Yeah, and I think you're really going to see the full de-evolution of him this season because now he has to play with Westbrook again. And I've been watching some clips and highlights from those Clipper games, and I mean, neither of them know how to play off the ball. There was like 3 straight possessions I watched of Harden where he would get wide open corner threes, one of the most efficient shots in basketball, and he was pump faking or would start to drive towards the basket when there would already be multiple players in his way. Like there was no outlet pass available. It was just like I really think that it's like the Clippers were already in a position where this is kind of like the last try with George and Kawhi. And we've talked. When I came on, one of the last times I came on, we talked about this. How like this is their last chance. I think when we were actually doing our ranking video, Paul, of the different top 15 players, like if they don't do this year, like it's over. And I mean, I know, wasn't it you, Harry, that was like very low on the Clippers? You had them like not even in the playoffs or barely making the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I think so. And then like funny enough, like I felt kind of like silly doing that because then they started off the season
Yeah,
good and
like
then they traded for
I would have
Harden and
agreed
like
with
killed
you.
it.
I would have agreed with you in that I would have thought you were being too harsh on them. Now, like this is bad, dude. This isn't just a 3-game losing streak. This is like a culture fit. This is like a like construction, like you're missing a piece in the Lego set type fit.
Yeah, and I've got this thing where I like to be low on kind of like these like old super teams that have kind of just been like put together with like duct tape and glue haphazardly just to get like three studs together.
Yeah, it's like the
They're all
2K
past their
team.
prime. They don't fit together well. And like you see it where it's like all these like young teams are really high in the standings right now, like the Timberwolves, the Mavs, the Rockets, the Thunder, and like teams like scrapping for the play-in right now are like the Lakers, the Suns, and the Clippers. Because like the roster construction just like doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then also just like as these players get older, it's like they're just not as good as they were, but they try to maintain the same role. And I think that's like Harden's like biggest issue is like so bad. And like, here in the way he talks, you see in the way he plays, like so badly, he still wants to be the guy. He still wants to average 30 points per game. But like that's just like not the best way for him to contribute to winning. So I think it's kind of why you see the Sixers get better by getting rid of him, and you see the Clippers get worse. And I think unless he is willing to, accept some kind of role change on the roster, like the Clippers are really going to suffer from this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at like a lot of the more recent championship teams, even going as far back to like say the Celtics in 2008, that's one of the last teams that I can remember that was assembled mostly with players that either they traded for or were younger rookie type players. Like in Rondo's case, he was only his second year player. But all those guys, come from other teams where, Garnett was a top 5 player in the entire NBA for 10 years before he joined the Celtics. Ray Allen was averaging 25 points per game in Seattle, and Paul Pierce was one of the best scorers of the 2000s. They all come together and are basically like, yeah, we're all pretty good at these things still. We can put this all together. Maybe we're not all going to average 25 a game again, but like we can do this and we can win. Garnett wins Defensive Player of the Year. Ray Allen top 3 in 3-point percentage in the entire league, and Pierce wins Finals MVP. Like Harden doesn't get that. That if you have a top 5 defensive player in Kawhi Leonard, you have one of the best 3-point shooters in the league in Paul George, you have one of the most explosive players still in Westbrook, and Harden is objectively a top 5 passer in the league. Like if he just like understood that and cared enough about that, they would run teams over still. Like even in those older years, they still have, each of those guys has one or two like qualities that is still elite among an elite group of people. It's honestly just pathetic.
Yeah.
Paul, what are your thoughts as someone who's holding James Harden stock right now in
I got
fantasy?
James Harden in fantasy. No, I mean, I'm mostly on the same page. I do, I kind of want to hedge my bet and say it's still very early in the experiment. This team hasn't practiced much together. There is so much talent. I do have faith in Ty Lue that I still think this team could come together and become a good regular season team. I think I do not see them as contenders. I don't see them, making the Western Conference Finals, but I think there's definitely a world where this can kind of click in some way. I think the point about kind of super teams and your distrust of them, Harry, and kind of being in an era where we're not seeing as many super teams or the need to assemble them, that we're kind of like, the best teams are teams that have been together for longer and have guys that they've drafted. And just the point of Westbrook and Harden being like horrible fits together. I think even
So redundant, yeah.
Even Harden and Kawhi are a bit redundant in how they find their shots. And I think Lowe was talking about how they're going to have to stagger them, how Paul George kind of has to takes more of a secondary role with Harden in the lineup.
Which like sucks because I think Paul George is probably better than Harden, but
he is.
So to make it work though, it's like he's gonna be the only one with a level enough head to like be willing to accept a lesser role. It's not gonna be Harden.
So we're kind of seeing, I mean, so far I don't know if it's come to fruition, but staggering Harden and Kawhi and doing more like Harden and Paul George and Russ and Kawhi or some combination of that.
Yeah. I think this experiment will kind of like prove if like I feel you can't just throw together a super team and be like get enough superstars in the same place and it'll work. Like because going back to like the Celtics example, that was a really good one, Sean, where like all of them had like very different play styles and all played off each other super well. Where you bring in like Garnett to be the big and defensive anchor. You got Paul Pierce be primary scorer, kind of like ball handler, and then Ray Allen be like this great off-ball player, and they all just fit together like so nicely. Like you have Garnett set picks for Pierce and kick out to Allen or hit Garnett on a roll. Like the offense can be built around these players. And when I look at the Clippers roster, I'm like, I don't know how you build like a competent offense with these guys because they all just want to like dribble the ball. Like I don't see how you design like a motion offense like makes sense. And you've got like Zubats at center who's like very mid, and it's like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like all of these types of teams over the course of the last, like again, 15 years or so, there's very few examples of what I like to call like purchased teams, where it's a group of people that didn't, the Warriors obviously are one of the best teams over the last several years. The vast majority of their best players were drafted by the organization. San Antonio, vast majority of the players. The only other time that it worked besides Boston was with the best player of all time in LeBron and Miami. And even they got stifled multiple times in the finals and didn't win the whole thing. And so I just think that, and again, even in that circumstance, we're talking about the best player ever, not James Harden and Paul George, who, great players in their own right, but like, come on. And LeBron was playing with Chris Bosh, who is incredibly underrated, in my opinion, as far as the evolution of the big man position and as a stretch four type player, as somebody who can step out and shoot threes. And
excellent fit on that team. Like,
yeah,
the fit makes tons of
like
sense
that's
with
the thing,
LeBron
like,
and Wade.
the only time that has worked is when like the fit is crafted perfectly. It's not like LeBron brought Kevin Durant and another small forward ball dominant player with him to Miami. Like that's just the thing, is all these other championship teams, even somebody like the Raptors when they won with Kawhi, they had a team that they'd already drafted that had all these players that made sense where they were supposed to go, and they just brought in like the centerpiece and then won it all. It's like these 2K franchise teams where you just have all these guys who are 90s overall but are all out of place. It doesn't work. It's never worked. And I don't know why teams still think they can get away with it and do it. Yeah, to your point, Paul, like regular season might, win 50 games, entertain some people. They get to the playoffs and it's a total shit show every time.
I think the same will apply for the Suns too. I think
I completely agree.
Yeah, and like the depth issues have been like very prevalent with like the Suns already, with like Beal missing the start of the season. Booker gets hurt for a couple of games. Durant has to play like crazy minutes now to like keep this team afloat. And then like the role players have just like proven not to be as good as expected. Although everyone kind of like, they're all like veteran minimum guys, so they're all dart throws anyway. But yeah, like guys like, Kata beats D up, who are like, oh, maybe they'll get cheeky minutes from this guy. It's like, no, it's really just Durant.
Yeah.
So it's there. Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot going on this team right now. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super hot on the Suns now, and I think I kind of was going into the year, but I think I'm at the point where officially I'm like I'm all in on the young teams, and I think the time has like passed these older
And
teams.
Denver would
Yeah,
still obviously, but yeah, I think I do. I think that's something that I'm honestly really excited about the new
it's a new era.
CBA. Huh?
Yeah, it's like a new era of basketball right now. Not only like the new guys coming up, but like as you're going to mention, like with the CBA kind of like changing how rosters are going to be constructed.
Yeah, I just think I love the idea now that it's going to make it a lot harder, um, even in the regular. Like it's going to make the regular season more competitive because yeah, you can put together a Clippers team that has all these guys and like we're overreacting a little bit. I think they'll probably still at least make the play in at absolute minimum. Even a team like the Bulls, for instance, who are an absolute dumpster fire, still could make the play in tournament simply because they have three pretty good players. Horrible fit, doesn't work at all. It's a total mess. But like in the regular season, it can work. With the way that the new cap is going to structure, like you can't do that anymore. It's not going to work. You have to develop your guys in the team. And if you pay people, you got to be damn sure that that's a player that A, fits the roster that you have, and B, is going to like play the way you want them to for the duration of the contract.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Because like the ability to make like these big superstar trades is going to be super limited with the new CBA.
mm-hmm.
So people are going to be like stuck in their contracts. It's not gonna be the same thing where they'll be like, oh yeah, we can just like add this guy, see if it works, doesn't work, trade him halfway through the season, get the picks back that we gave up for him. So it's gonna be a lot harder to do that. So you really got to commit to your teams now. So it's gonna be nice to see how the league evolves with that. And
Why is
and
it
I
so
think
much harder?
anyway, what's up?
Why is it so much harder now with the new CBA?
I think with the rule is there are a bunch of rules. One of the big ones is that when you're making a trade for like a max contract player, so you can't take on like additional cap or anything like that. So it
Mm,
needs to be like a perfect match contract wise to make it work.
okay.
And like you
I'd
can't
have
go into the
to,
luxury tax. Like I think like with like
yeah,
mid-season trades, and if you're into the luxury tax, you can't add people from the buyout market. So like you're not going to see these superstar teams just like add, like when
PJ
Westbrook got
Tucker.
like, yeah, exactly, or like when Westbrook got like bought out in the middle of the season, like a championship team like couldn't just add him unless they had like managed their luxury tax appropriately.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I know there's other pieces to the new CBA too, just in regards to like how much one player can take up. I think the entire like there's a limit maybe to like how much one player can take up your team's entire salary cap or something like that. I know that basically what I've heard is based on the math is like you're only going to be able to afford two max level players going forward. So again, a team like the Clippers that now currently is employing four, it's just not going to be possible.
Hmm.
Even if you didn't sign the contract in the first place, like in the case of Harden's contract with Philly or Westbrook with the Lakers.
Gotcha. All right. Are
Yeah.
there any
So
other teams we want to pivot towards? I feel like
Paul, if you haven't proposed one yet, unless I know you kind of brought up the Clippers situation, but if you want to just bring up a team,
the Cavs you had mentioned, and they're kind of an interesting one. My in summary, I kind of think they're slow start and they'll get back into it. I think a lot of people, including me, kind of overrated like Max Struess and George Yang as like filling the forward hole. I don't know how we convinced ourselves. Struess has looked awesome, don't get me wrong, but like still a massive hole, still a bit of redundancy in that roster. But I
yeah, it
think
doesn't feel like there was a massive upgrade from like Chetty Osman. Like it kind of feels like he's still there.
right. You just have like two Shetty Osmonds now.
Yeah, and Strus is a bit better. Like he does shoot the three ball more consistently, so he's an upgrade, but
Yes.
still feels a little bit of a hole there. Garland's missed some time. I think we'll turn around. Garland missed a lot of time and has had a slow start.
Right.
Mobley looks better. I think they'll get back up to like top five in the East by the end of
well,
the year.
Vert's
Because
been really good though for them.
yeah, he's been amazing. Like Mitchell is like in the MVP conversation right now. He's been phenomenal. I think he's averaging like 32 points per game or something insane, which will probably come down a little bit, but he's been absolutely extraordinary. So I'm
Yeah,
not too worried about this Cavs team. Actually, I think they're still going to be really good. But with that said, I also wouldn't hate to see them make a move at some point to maybe get a better forward. But we'll see.
I'm bummed out I didn't get Mitchell in the draft. Kevin picked him one spot ahead of me, and I think that if I had gotten Mitchell, I'd be in a lot better of a spot right now. I feel like my team is very like deep, but my two best players or my two first picks, being Mikal Bridges and Siakam, have both like grossly underperformed to start this year, which sucks because then like in 5, 6, and 7 rounds, I get Sengun, who's obviously been amazing, and Tyler Hero was averaging 100 before he got hurt. So that's been really frustrating to see Mitchell play so well and just know that I was so close to having him. It's tough.
Yeah, the other things a little bit. Those are both weird picks. Because like going into it, it's like Siakam and Bridges were like the clear top scoring options on these teams going into it. And like Cam Thomas just like finally gets this big role. Now he's the top scorer on the Nets. And then the Raptors like pivot to their younger guys, and now it's the Barnes show.
I can live with the Bridges thing, and I think honestly his numbers will probably get better as he gets on with the season, because I think this is now.
I think so too. I think his scoring will go up.
Yeah, the pressure was on him big time at the beginning of the year. Like, you're like the one guy who we think actually could lead this team. It's a collection of like decent, mostly rosterable NBA players. Like their team has like 9 or 10 guys who deserve to be in the NBA, but besides Bridges, none of them could be like a leader of a team. And even then, I'm not certain Bridges is that guy either. But I do think that the Siakam one is really annoying to me, just because for him, it's not just that Barnes is playing so well. Like defensively, Siakam's numbers are in the shitter compared to what he's usually doing. And that's what's really holding him back from being like even his usual 100-point self, is he's getting no steals or blocks, which has been pretty frustrating.
Yeah, he's averaging 0.1 blocks per game right now. But maybe that also means there's that might mean there's a regression to the mean due for him.
Maybe I was just too high on him. I don't know, but he's been very frustrating for sure. What were we talking about though? The Cavs. I'm gotta say, I know we talked about this previously in the redraft video. I'm still kind of like, there's something about Mobley. I still feel like he's a little bit overrated. I think he isn't taking, like, he needs to be doing what Scotty Barnes is doing right now. He needs to be doing, like, having that jump this season for me to believe that he's going to be this player that everyone continues to say he could be, and he just isn't doing that yet. He's still, like, a very good player, but I kind of put him in the same tier as, like, I don't know, like what DeAndre Ayton was on the Suns before he kind of like exposed himself to being kind of crappy.
His stats have regressed a tiny bit, but I don't know. Actually, no.
Who, for Mobley?
Yeah.
Yeah, for Mobley, it's like I like Mobley a lot, and he still brings a ton on the defensive end, which is huge. Like that alone like makes him super valuable to this team. But I do wish his scoring was up like a little bit. I did expect him to take like I expected a larger jump on offense this year for him, and he definitely had the opportunity to do so at the start of the year with Garland out, and we didn't see it, so he's gonna get less touches now that Garland's back. So maybe the jump's not happening this year, but I do still like him as a player. But the jury is still out to see like how good like he can actually be.
That's the thing, is like I don't think he's a bad player by any. I think he's a great player, but like,
right, it's like, is he like a max contract guy though? Like, is he like is he like a 10-time All-Star, or is he like a 2 or 3-time All-Star?
I think he's like a baby Jaren Jackson Jr. in my opinion. That's kind of the comparison that I've heard for him, and that's where I think he's at right now. Is he's kind of a subpar rebounder for his position. He's an excellent defender. Can't really bring the shot outside to the 3 though, and he still can't do that in year 3. Like that's concerning given the expectations I think people have put on him. At least
it is interesting how like his stats have not really improved so drastically since his rookie year. Like
amazing rookie year. Like these stats were amazing for a rookie, but like given like how much hype he got after his rookie season, how good he was, like definitely would have expected a bigger jump.
And Jared Allen was out for a lot of the beginning of this year too. So it's like he really doesn't have the excuse of like, oh, like I have these guys eating into my, potential touches, whatnot. Like to your point, Harry, Garland and Allen were essentially out for the first like 2 weeks of this season. So it was Mitchell him and mixture of Strus, Levert, Okoro, all these other random forwards they have. Like, we need more from you, dude.
Yeah. You want to see 20 points.
Yeah, seriously. And not just 20 points, but 20 points on, more 3-pointers, post moves, like expanding how you can score, not just the actual amount of points you can score. It's like, obviously a pretty drastic example, but watching Tatum this season with the Celtics, like deliberately putting himself in the post and actually trying to do post moves on people and successfully doing it, and still, averaging the same amount of points he was last year. Like, that's the kind of development I want to see from Mobley, is not just the amount, but the quality of what and how he's scoring.
Agreed. Yeah. Anyway, should we talk fantasy for like the last 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's riff a little bit. Let's do it. Let's talk
I just want to
fantasy.
rant about my team for 2 minutes.
Go for it.
That, like, so far, and I have faith that my team's going to pick up. Obviously, Ja will come back eventually. But it's funny because I got Joel Embiid, who's, like Harry mentioned, a top 3 fantasy player. He was like the best fantasy player. But then every other pick has just like been worse than expected. And I just have like Joel Embiid in all 80s. With Cat being my second overall pick, regretting that.
He's been
like
super disappointing.
The Wolves have been good though. Like, the Wolves have actually been really good. So, silver lining.
I'm a big Wolves guy, as you know. And Cat's shown some upside. He's playing. The scoring's there. I think I was just a bit silly to think that, like, I don't know, like the secondary stats would be there. Like, I don't know, with Gobert, he's just like not going to grab over 10 rebounds. He's a good passer, but doesn't have the ball in his hands nearly as much as in the past, so he's not going to get those few assists. And then the scoring's just way worse than I thought. Like, I thought he, after scoring like 21 last year, I thought he was going to take a little bit more of a step. I think he will eventually get back to like 22. But he's at like 18, 19, I think, right now. So it is what it is. Van Fleet has actually been really good. He's like an 87. But then, yeah, like Chris Paul, worse than expected. Harden, in his few games back, has been dog shit. Drew Holiday has been okay, but an 80. So, yeah, the Frogs right now, it's kind of the Joel Embiid and company. We're surviving, though. We'll be 2-1 at the end of this. I lost to Tim in very painful fashion, and that's my presentation.
Amazing. I still like the Frogs. Like what I said from the start, like, you just got to hang on until Jaws back and just kind of see where things are. Because, like, yeah, he's missing a ton of games, but he's really going to come back and be in 110. So you just got to be in the playoff picture by the time he comes back, and then you should easily be in the race.
Would have been crazy to be 3-0 at this point.
Yeah, it would have been undeserved. So I'm glad that you're not.
It would have been undeserved, but it was close to happening. But yeah, Duran and Simmons are hurt right now.
Simmons is a great pick.
Interesting.
I'm
not vibing with my team.
Yeah. You gotta have the opposite team as I do, Paul. I feel like, in terms of, I've had, for everyone watching, like, I've had notoriously bad luck with injuries over the last several years playing fantasy, where my best or two, in last year's case, both of my top draft picks got hurt and were out for the season, in Cat and Cade Cunningham. So I went ultra conservative and tried to pick exclusively players who don't typically get hurt. And it's worked in that way. Like, I feel like I have a pretty deep team, like I mentioned earlier, but I don't have a lot of guys who can pop off and get like those 150-point nights when I really need them. And that's something that I'm a little bit nervous about. But I'm kind of hoping, in the same boat, that I can hold on and outlast teams just by having a healthier squad that's, like, maybe not as top heavy as, like either one of your teams, obviously, but I have the depth that I can beat other teams in that way.
Moneyball.
It's a valid strategy. I know we usually try to do that, just like try to avoid guys who we think might be injury prone, and especially like come the end of the season, which is why you'll pretty much like never see, my team with like LeBron or Durant on it.
Exactly.
Because the payoff is huge at the start of the year. You're like, at the start of the year, you're always like, oh my God, like Kevin Durant in the third round, like, say less, like, this is amazing. But like he hasn't played more than 55 games in like 5 seasons. So it's like
Yeah, and the thing
the
you gotta
risk
have
is
to
just like so huge that you like lose one of your top picks in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not even just like the injury stuff, but to your point, like if you are going for like, and I'm sure you guys probably do the same thing, but when I'm drafting, like I try to draft players on like those fringe like bubble teams where, or not bubble, but like the play-in tournament teams, because those guys, their young stars have to play in order for them to make the playoffs. Whereas like a LeBron or a Durant, even if they're not hurt, they might get sat those later season games. They're going to get a lot more rest so that they're not playing for the playoffs. And I know when our season used to be longer, I would watch people who had like LeBron or even like as further back as like Tim Duncan and some of those guys would get sat like 10 games before the season's ending, and that's just like prime playoff fantasy basketball time. You're just getting fucked.
Yeah, playoffs used to be an absolute shit show back when we pretty much had it going through the entire season. Like I
Yeah.
remember I won a championship on the back of Drew Eubanks, who was dropping like 120 a game in like the finals, and we're like, "What is this? Like, we're not even playing with like the teams we drafted. This is literally just
Yeah.
turned into like a scrap fest on the waiver wire." So it's definitely better now. And yeah, that's definitely the meta. It's like I like my team a lot. My only like big regret is like I like taking the upside pick of Cade, but like I was very close to taking Bam, and I just feel dumb now because Bam is like a 102 and Cade is like an 85. So
Yeah.
feel a little bit silly, but I'm not.
That could change though.
It
Too.
could though. It could. It's still early. Like Cade's getting like 6 turnovers a game. I'm like, dude, just like clean up your turnovers. It's like a 1-to-1 ratio. He's getting like 7 assists a game, which is awesome. But he's essentially just like wiping out all those points with his turnovers. I'm like, if you can just like cut back on those, he'll be like what I expected. But
Mhm.
yeah, I did not see that coming. And then obviously like his rebounds are like a little down. But I think that's gonna like stay that way because like Asar and Duran are just absolute like rebound monsters.
Yeah.
Other than that, I like my team though. I think my team's awesome. I think I'm gonna lose this week, but that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Ross and I are like 1 and 2 right now, so
You and Ross
my,
are the
my
teams to beat for sure.
yeah. So my barely lose this week, but it's a long regular season, so I'm not worried dropping a game.
Tough
Yeah.
CJ having like a collapsed lung out of nowhere because he was balling out. He was the first
Yeah,
off.
he was in 100 in fantasy. Like he was averaging like 100 a game. He was like one of my best players.
Such
I think it
a
was just, I think essentially was my second best player. It's like him and like Markkinen.
such a big brain pick too. I feel like he was not on my radar whatsoever. And he never is, which is stupid because like you said, he's quite moneyball.
Yeah, it's like this is like he usually plays like 70 plus games a season, gets tons of minutes, great score, gets rebounds, tons of assists. Starting point guard on a really good team. So yeah, I like him. I'm excited for him to come back, but I also like it's not the worst thing ever having him and Rozier hurt right now because it does allow me to play around a little bit with free agency. Whereas like during like the first week of the season, I was like I really only had like one spot that I could actually
Yeah.
like add and drop with. So
There is
this
like
early in the season, it is nice to have that flexibility to kind of like bring on prospects.
No,
that's a big shout out too, because also like I'm right now I'm like neck and neck with Stone. Like I could beat him, I could lose. I'm only down by 30 right now, and he's outgame. Like I think by the end of the matchup, he'll outgames play me by 3 players. And like to your point, like it's sometimes almost worse when you have like an entire roster of rosterable players. Like you shouldn't drop any of them, but in those like late stages of those matchups where like you need that extra game to play that could bring you over the top, it's like really stressful. Like I might have to give up somebody who I really wouldn't want to drop.
Yeah, when my guys are back, I might need to try to do like some kind of consolidation trade to free up our roster spot. But
Yeah.
we'll see because like I think I got a bit of time. Like Rozier will probably be back soon, but I think McCollum's probably like due to miss a few weeks.
Yeah.
we're running out of time, but I was just real quick that Harry always preaches that like some of those fringe like just over 60, sometimes they're worth dropping in the early parts of the season because there are always gems on the free agency. There are guys that are just bound to be like really valuable players early in the season that just go over people's heads in the
Yeah,
draft. So if you made it
yeah,
this far, you get that knowledge.
yeah. You get that little nugget. Yeah, because it's all about upside. Like I've got like Dorian Finney-Smith, who's like a 65 right now, but I'm like that's his max, and he's not going to be that the rest of the year. It's like so I'm not going to like delude myself into thinking he's going to be like a season-long contributor. Like he's getting cut next week, so I can stream. That's
Yeah.
like pretty much how I feel about players in that range, unless they're like a higher potential player. It's like because like Cole Anthony's in that range, but I think he at least has potential to where I might keep him around a little bit longer. But if it's someone who's just like a role player, who's like a 60, 65, like I don't think you need to keep them.
Yeah.
All right, sign us off, Sean. We have 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I said, I appreciate you guys bringing me back on to the show. It's been great talking about real life basketball, fantasy basketball, basketball general.
Like and subscribe. You have to say like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Turn on the, hit the bell for post
Yeah.
notifications.
Comment about the Miles Bridges drama.
Yeah, comment about that for sure. And yeah, I hope to be back sometime again soon. I appreciate the opportunity, and
You will.
it's been fun.
God bless everyone.
GG's.